I've been asked, as Trina just said, to give some guidelines on how journalists can deal with digital dilemmas without losing sight of the overall direction. And that is an excellent question, as the diversity of topics that you discussed during this gathering shows. You've discussed many of the crucial digital dilemmas of today. You looked at cybersecurity, the implications of power imbalances when it comes to personal data, and also debated challenging the dominance of big tech just now. Amongst all of that and the many more digital rights issues that we come across in daily life, it is easy to lose the overview, and it's difficult to be sure what to focus on. To offer some signposting in the digital wilderness, I want to first recall why it is important that journalists investigate and write about digital issues. Why does the light that journalism can shine on, say, data processing practices matter? Or why is it important to continue probing the way that platforms, think of the recent Instagram and WhatsApp blackouts, are controlling our digital public square? And I'll talk a little bit about the connection between journalism and litigation in this context, as strategic litigation is the lens through which the organization I currently run, the Digital Freedom Fund, approaches digital rights challenges. I'll then briefly touch upon some digital rights as human rights issues, which I think is the key premise on which much of this work rests. And finally, I want to share what I think are the crucial topics to focus on right now. All human rights are important, of course, and all human rights stand on equal footing with each other, but there are some areas where we are seeing rapid developments that will be detrimental to us all if they are left unchecked. So the answer to the question why journalism matters when it comes to digital issues is quite simple, actually. It's the same as the answer to the question why journalism matters for human rights in general. Journalists play a crucial role in not only truth-finding, holding powerful actors to account, and shining a light on human rights abuses and underserved causes, but their work can also give rise to concrete further action in other arenas, such as the justice system. And this is a very specific dimension of the old mantra of speaking truth to power. Journalists can play a crucial role in the courts as evidence gatherers, as storytellers, and sometimes even as claimants and experts. An all too familiar example of the first, of course, journalists as evidence gatherers, is the Snowden revelations, which exposed the practice of mass surveillance by some of the world's most powerful intelligence services. These revelations did not only spur on public debate, they also spurred on litigation in courts all over the world, from Kenya and East Africa to the United States. And litigation in Europe that builds on these revelations is still ongoing as we speak, to decide if bulk surveillance is permissible and also to evaluate if data transfers to the United States should be allowed or not. I believe that there is a crucial role for journalists to play in our battles for more just, more democratic societies, and in supporting movements that are working to bring about change, be it by playing a hands-on role in legal proceedings, by contributing to a case through investigative reporting, or by publicizing the most important work that our activists do. And while at the face of it, for example, processing personal data doesn't sound very much like a frontline human rights issue, all of the topics you have been discussing in the panels these past few days have real-life consequences. At the Digital Freedom Fund, we operate under the mantra that digital rights are human rights, by which we want to emphasize that technology affects every aspect of our lives, and therefore all human rights. There's a very traditional view of digital rights as concerning only data protection, online expression and privacy, but all our human rights, including our economic, social and cultural rights, can be affected in the digital context. From access to healthcare and education to our right to political participation, it all has a digital dimension, and this is something we have all seen all too clearly in the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. The days that we could pretend that there is something mysterious separating our online and offline worlds are far behind us. So, if everything is within scope, what should we focus on? Well, technology, like every other human invention, replicates the power imbalances of the setting it originates from. The role data processing plays in this is something that you discussed yesterday, and this is a textbook example of how existing patterns of discrimination, for example, racist behavior by law enforcement, feeds into replication and even amplification of those existing practices. For example, data-driven predictive policing technology that leads to the over-policing of neighborhoods that house marginalized groups. These problematic power dynamics manifest themselves in numerous ways. In a migration context, which you also looked at, the concept of digital borders is steadily taking hold. Not only are European countries moving immigration decisions further and further away from their physical borders, the invasive use of technology in managing them is taking on truly dystopian dimensions. The use of artificial intelligence is integrated into facial and gait recognition systems, into retinal and fingerprint scans, ground sensors, aerial video surveillance drones, biometric databases, asylum decision-making processes, and other aspects of border enforcement. This has led to really disturbing the reports of drastic measures being taken by those seeking safe entry, such as people trying to make their fingerprints unusable to avoid tracking. It also says a lot about our apparently non-universal notion of humanity, that we think that technological extraction is a better method of engaging with migrants than getting information from them directly with their informed consent. But it's not just governments that abuse their power. Private sectors, such as the financial sector, are increasingly being automated with far-reaching impact on marginalized communities' abilities to exercise their economic, social, and cultural rights. While the narrative of companies is that they work with unbiased scoring algorithms that are blind to characteristics such as gender, class, and ethnicity, research shows that many of these algorithms make their decisions based on, yes again, historical data and decision-making patterns. This is happening everywhere, every day, and in more areas than we might intuit. For example, your creditworthiness may very well be affecting your chances of being promoted at work, as employers are trying to find shortcuts to label us and assess our usefulness in the capitalist systems that we operate in. But wait, at least we can all freely call out and hate these practices online, right? The narrative of the digital public square is very seductive, but we should never forget that the platforms that facilitate our exchanges, the Facebooks, Twitters, Googles, and the like of this world, are private companies that are in this line of business to make a profit, not out of the goodness of their hearts. And while over the years, many terms of service, community guidelines, and policies have ostensibly sought to make sure platforms remain open to the public at large by banning users engaging in online abuse, threats, and the like, much remains unclear. For one, the enforcement of these house rules remains pretty much a black box exercise, invisible and impossible to challenge. And then there's a total absence of transparency on how both content promotion and censorship are automated. All of this is not simply about takedowns or leave-up decisions, but again comes down to power dynamics. The recent testimony of the Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen, speaks for itself in that regard. But also earlier practices that have come to light, such as Facebook's cross-check program, which imposed a different regime for VIP accounts in how content from those accounts would be reviewed for content moderation purposes, are a good illustration of this. Apparently, content that violates the company's rules suddenly is less harmful if it comes from a celebrity account. Or, put it differently, if it's up to Facebook, your privilege will protect you. Now, why do I mention all these challenges? There is another saying that is often used in relation to journalism and human rights work alike, which speaks about giving a voice to the voiceless. This is wrong. Everyone has a voice, we just do not choose to listen to each voice alike. And it is your job, all of our jobs, to make people listen when they don't. First, because it's the right thing to do. I referred to humanity earlier on, and this should be the compass that guides us all. And second, because what we see is happening to what we think of as the other today will happen to all of us tomorrow. Technological development is moving at a rapid speed, and as things currently stand, it's all but clear that its positive impact outweighs the negative. But here it is important to remember that it's anything but a foregone conclusion that technology has to play such a central role in our societies. What kind of tech we develop and where and how we deploy it is our decision, it's our choice. And who to make better sure that these choices are informed choices than all of us gathered in this virtual room here today and our colleagues across the world. Digital rights are human rights and they concern us all. Let's ensure that we get to enjoy them fully, equally, and in all areas of life. Thank you.